Hey everybody. So today we're kind of revisiting a method that we took from pottery a few years back, but that was back when we didn't talk. So we are going to show you how we bubble dye leather, and then we're just going to make a quick piece out of it that So bubble dyeing is basically we're going to take some dye, add some soap, blow some bubbles, and the bubbles will be made of dye, so they make really nice patterns. I'm going to take my watch off first because this gets everywhere. Well, if you're super careful it won't, but I'm kind of a bull in a china closet.
You're usually very careful.
Yeah, no, that's not me.
So much finesse.
Like ready to dye leather, pour leather dye. So I'm going to pour just straight leather dye. We're going to use red. And now you're not going to be able to reuse this for anything but bubble dyeing, so only use as much as you're comfortable like pouring out when you're done. Then I'm going to just take Dawn dish soap and add a bit to the dye. Mix that up. So if you're careful, you can pick up small amounts of bubbles and kind of roll them off into places to sort of fill like space. You just want to kind of be careful, and I'm not perfect at it because I'm not really good at this method, but you just want to be careful not to like do a lot of splatter, like touching the leather with the actual straw or whatever tool you're using, because then you get a lot of splatters that aren't bubbles. So if you like that look, go for it. But if you don't want it, just kind of let them pop on their own and experiment with it. You can blow through the straw and move bubbles around. It's a fun thing. It's just kind of messy, so make sure you're not doing it anywhere that the dye is going to ruin something. We have our first layer dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of black to this red to darken it up. So I want to do a second layer that's a little bit darker. I'm going to add a little more soap, and you mess around with your soap, water, dye ratios. Some dyes you need like a ridiculous amount of soap, some you don't need any water, but they all tend to work in different ratios. So you can see I added more dye, so I need to add more soap. So it's next day now, and this is what we got going on now that we're all dried up. So I'm going to take some Tokonol. You can seal this with whatever you want. It's not paint, so it's dye, so it's gonna stay in that leather for good. But we're just gonna, Tokonol has a lot of acrylic resin in it, so it's pretty perfect for sealing stuff like this. You don't just have to do edges with it. I'm gonna use my bone folder almost as a squeegee to get this in. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go through and just like the back of the grain that you would use Tokonol on to smooth it out. I'm going to do the same thing with the front of the grain, and if I want to bring some product anywhere in particular, I can just kind of move it around. And we're going to focus on pressing this in because we want this nice and shiny and slick. And you'll see also, this is very similar to finishing wood in the sense that the tokonol is going to make the colors pop a little bit. So we're sticking with only bone folder for now, and we're going to burnish this out kind of, not super aggressively, but with a decent amount of pressure. Because we want to compress everything. We're basically trying to act like a jack glaze or something like a jack glazing machine or something like that. So, it's going to be gross. Once we have that all done, I'm going to go in with an old t-shirt here and buff this out. Now, if your tokonol, because it is essentially just glue, if your tokonol starts to get sticky, you can just let it dry and then add another coat on top. But I found, and if you have any other ways to do this with the tokonol, please let me know in the comments. I found that after you use the bone folder, just a clean cotton rag, shirt, old shirt, whatever, will polish this right up. And we're not looking, I mean, obviously we're not a tannery, so we're not going to be able to get tannery quality finishes, but it's really nice to have a nice shiny finish that you did yourself from home. You might lose a little bit of color, but we're going to do another coat of tokonol after this too. A little more tokonol. This time I'm going to hit it with a little bit of very fine grit sandpaper. And we're not sanding the leather down, but we have a dried layer of tokonol on this leather now. And it does sink in, but it also sits on top. So I'm going to get a nice thin film over the whole little chunk here. And then I'm going to take 600 grit-ish, and I'm just going to go through and really work that in circular motions. You don't want to use a grit that's going to leave any marks, but you don't have to be easy with this either. Then we can use our bone folder to scrape up the excess. And you can see we're starting to get a nice smooth finish on this leather. Kind of like, almost like glazing at home in a really simplistic, to simplify it a lot. And then I'm not going to add any more, I'm just going to buff it out one more time. There's still enough product on there. And with the final buffing, I'm not really applying much pressure, I'm just letting the clean cotton do the work. And you can see now we have beautiful shine, the colors, there's a lot more depth of color here. So we're going to let this dry for about 10 minutes because it's a little damp. Come back, do just one final quick buff, and then we're ready to make something out of it. And so this is the other one that I did, I was just playing around, but this is, you can get some like, I don't make like movie props and stuff, but this is a really good way to make leather look super, not old, but like apocalyptic kind of. So the bubbles, you can see kind of, you get splatters and splotches and a little bit of bubbling, but it doesn't look so much like bubbles as this does. It looks much more like aged,
like skin.
Yeah, like aged skin. So this is, did a couple layers of the red, and then I added some red to the black. Then I added more black, or I added black to the red, then more black to the red, and just kept like totally covering this whole piece with bubbles that it was more or less a pool of the dye, but you can see where the bubbles do stick in most places just to add some texture. So it doesn't always have to look like bubbles. You can do like an aged, if you're doing like cosplay or anything like that, this is a cool thing to experiment with. So once we are all dry and glossed up here, it's time to make something. So Kelina designed up this cool card wallet design. I'm going to make the entire thing out of this, so we'll see how that goes. This is a 3-pocket wallet with a flap and double snap closure. It's got 2 slots for cards and a slot for cash. And it looks like it's going to be a fun one. I've never made it before. And the first link will have all the buckle guy tools we used, dies, all that good stuff, the new main thread. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.